I fixed WoW for you. You're welcome. But in all honesty, WoW is doing great, by the way. So great we got more people playing now than ever. Probably since Wrath. Or had at the beginning of the expansion. But not anymore. Why? Despite all the good stuff it has done since Shadowlands, certain things are still stubbornly stuck to by the devs, and it's time to let go. No more waiting in queues for Mythic Plus dungeons. No more farming the same raid for 3 months and still no trinket. No more! After the Warcraft Direct and announcement of the 11.1 patch, Marcelian and I couldn't help but notice there was something missing. Sure, we got a dope new zone filled with awesome infused explosions, mayhem, and steam engines and... wait, that's all we ever wanted. Unless there was something else. Something more. Oh yeah, the game is broken, yo, what the fuck? And no, I'm not referring to the plethora of bugs surrounding raids and dungeons, or the ones around the hero talents, or the ones plaguing specs and classes, or the ones around the gear, or... I don't think I'm doing the game any favors so far. But no, bugs in live service online games are part of the course, and they have been systematically fixed, albeit slower than we would have hoped. But I am talking about Mythic Plus, bro! No changes being addressed to Mythic Plus was definitely the biggest thing missing from the patch 11.1 announcement. Now, they might have plans for some and haven't said anything yet, but at this point, I cannot stay quiet any longer. True, Mythic Plus has changed drastically in the last 2 years, from the seasonal affix being gone, to the whole new gearing system that affects raids as well, sure, to the Mythic Plus squish into Mythic Zeros worth doing as well, to the complete revamp of affixes twice. Goddamn, still cannot believe that they did get rid of Sanguine. To the healer and tank nerfs. Some of these changes hit home and were a success, while others did not. We have to live in a world where the devs can take a chance, take a risk, and make something new, and they did. And now it's time to move on. If not for anything, that we called these issues out since beta. What are these issues, you say, and how can they be fixed? Well, the first one is we cannot have keys deplete anymore. I cannot believe this is still in the game, and I haven't heard of a good single reason as to the value of this feature. This is likely the biggest aggressor that supports key levers and meta discrimination. Let me make it simple for you. If my friends and I have a +10 key for Necrotic Wake and we do it and we fail it, we shouldn't get a +9 random key. One, we already did a +9 equivalent difficulty since we are already here in a 10, attempting the new challenge. Forcing us to do a 9 only to get another 10 is stupid. In a raid, when you wipe on a heroic boss, you are not locked out of the heroic raid until you kill a normal boss. That's stupid. And if your argument is, but raids and dungeons are different, you cannot just... They are different, and they already have different rewards that are of a much lower quality than raids, and a whole dungeon takes 30 odd minutes, if it goes well, to finish, while a raid boss is down in 6. So no, to whatever comparison you want to make. This is not about the one-on-one analogy between the two, but rather about game design. We cleared the +9 difficulty. The +10 key depleted should just remain the same 10 key, and we just try again. 2. The key cannot be random anymore. This is a much larger problem that doesn't just hit keys. Enough with the RNG. We tried it, it still sucks. The lack of deterministic rewards is killing the drive to push content. The dungeons are not equal. The loot tables are not equal. Forcing me to do a key I don't want, because that's just the one I have, is stupid. This is a Legion system that was thought of more than 8 years ago. That's 2 president mandates ago. That was before Trump was president for the first time. That's how long ago this was thought to be a good idea. At the end of the dungeon, if it was failed, have the Panda Lady NPC be there and offer to lower my failed 10 to a 9 if I want to, or let me choose to swap it to another dungeon or keep it the same. There's no sane reason as to why my friends and I cannot just retry that +10 that we got, or go into a different 10 and practice it there. Failing keys already is a major waste of time, rewards almost no crests, and 1 fewer item. How many more times must we be punished for it, instead of just have a fun game to play? If the goal is to clear and we fail, we cannot just reset the dungeon since we lose the key level. And if we clear it but fail the timer, we lose the key level and the dungeon in question. No wonder people leave after 1 or 2 failed pulls, since that already means that the dungeon will not be timed and the time won't be worth it. Leavers and the people not inviting ferals could be fixed with just this. Maybe ferals being invited is asking too much though. Next is to buff tanks and healers. We could be brainstorming endless ways this could be implemented, and we already did too many videos on that. It doesn't really matter how it is done, because the baseline problem is that tanks and healers are not a proportionally difficult role the same as a DPS would be, and they are not proportionally rewarded for their effort the same as a DPS would be. Healing and tanking is vastly more difficult than being a DPS, vastly more stressful, and vastly more accountable and blamed on. Hence why a lot fewer people play them. How many more months must we wait 30 minutes for a tank and a healer to show up? It's silly. Tanks and healers being played less is not new, but it's visibly worse now ever since the tuning change. And I am not even going to talk about the fact that the tank and healer changes were all to address the high-end players, leaving the rest of the community to suck it up. Really nice. Maybe they weren't intended that way, but when most high-end M+ pushers and Mythic raiders have pointed out it sucks, the question remains, who were these changes even made for? Either way, no biggie, they tried, commendable, it didn't work, so now let's just move on. And if it wasn't clear, I'm not blaming the devs. Like I said, it's very healthy for the game for the devs to feel like they can try new things. But once those things have been tried and found lacking, can we just move on to the next bit? Which would be the lack of deterministic rewards. Told you we'll be back here. Having to farm 40 Arakara dungeons for a trinket is stupid. If it's not stupid, then it's an ARPG. Doing the same type of content more than a few dozen times for one item doesn't really feel like an MMO thing, even though grinding is an MMO thing. It feels like a Diablo or Path of Exile thing. I'm not saying put 100% drop chance in. I'm not even saying remove RNG in its entirety. I am saying put fucking deterministic rewards in. Tell me, a player, paying your sub and sinking the hours in, listen dude, if after 10 successful dungeon runs you still don't have the one item, here, you can just get it from this shiny new cool NPC vendor we totally did for the anniversary event, for the Awakened season, for the Fated season, for past expansions, and every time people loved it. Like, what the fuck? How many times can people say to bring back Valor vendor or the equivalent because they were better? If you make something that's good, decide to take it away, and then replace it with a worse thing every time you say it's actually better, it's just a definition of coping. The human brain is not meant to be healthy while grinding again and again and again and again the same activity for a chance at a random reward that is 90% of the time not what you want. That's called gambling. If you work at your job a whole month, your salary isn't an RNG drop. You wouldn't fucking work at your job if at the end of the month your boss would say, "Grats, instead of 100% of your salary, you have a chance at no salary. But there is a brand new state-of-the-art crock. Just the one. You might get the other one next month, or the same pair, or maybe 90% of your salary." Lack of deterministic rewards creates stress and friction in your brain, and that leads to people just giving up on WoW. I understand that friction is needed to keep things interesting, but that's already in the form of depleted keys, not getting into the dungeon, having people leave keys, looting the wrong item, not looting the item at all. How much more, bro? How much more? How about we have one of two things? Put a dungeon vendor outside each dungeon, and that vendor sells items for that dungeon. If you do a key, you loot a coin for that dungeon, and the coin can be used to purchase the item at an equivalent track that the dungeon would normally reward. No farming +2s for hero track items. Let's say after 10 Arakara coins, meaning 10 Arakara dungeons, meaning having 10 Arakara keys, or getting into 10 Arakara keys, and you can buy one item from that vendor. If it makes you feel that's too generous, make it 15 coins, or make it usable once per week. Just put it in. Or the second thing, we can have a universal NPC vendor so we don't have to bother with 8 different dungeon currencies for 3 different item types, and have that vendor only sell trinkets and weapons and rings, basically stuff that cannot be made into tier pieces. That's probably fair. Put the same price or same restrictions on it as before. Just put it in. Similarly, if the key levels and affixes remain, plus 12s have to drop myth track gear at the end. It is once again silly to be punished for not doing raids. Mythic Plus people can only get one myth track per week in the vault, and that randomly, or do raids. If we will continue to pretend Mythic Plus is an endgame content pillar similar to raids, we need equivalent rewards. Is myth track on plus 12s too generous? First, you haven't done a 12 yet, have you? Second, fine, make it only drop one item per dungeon, no matter what key level. Make it myth 1 of 6, then make it myth 2 of 6 on a plus 13, so there is an actual incentive to push keys. How much you want to bet players will fucking crowd dungeon portals like Vulpera's on a spot on the Horde Council if you add myth track item rewards, and have it scale with the dungeon level. The leaps between key X and key X plus 1 is high enough that it feels stupid to not have the reward also feel like a plus 1 reward as well. On top of this, please, for the love of God, make the end of the dungeon chest drop 5k gold on a plus 10 and scale it up and down respectively. With key level, of course. The fact that in a fantasy game you go into a dungeon, die a bunch of times, accumulate 2 to 10,000 gold worth of repair bills, 1,000 gold worth of consumables, and get what, 30 gold at the end? 50 gold in the chest at the end? How about you spit in my face and put another Brutosaur on the shop, why don't you? How are we not looting gold in a treasure chest at the end of the hardest dungeon in the game? How are we not looting profession materials in a game where the game content is so time consuming, being punished for having no time to gather materials that allow you to do the content you want to do just tells me you want me to buy WoW tokens. So give you more money then. Also, here's an idea. How about at the end of a plus 10 and higher, we unlock a 5% boost to our Valor Stone cap and drop rate? And this can stack up to whatever point the devs feel like it's fine. If we do 10 dungeons on a key level 10 or above, in time, we end up with 100% more Valor Stones, drop from all sources in the game, and the cap raised to 4,000. Just to start with. This feels so basic, so done in any other RPG games that have you grind dozens and dozens of dungeons, that the fact that it's missing from WoW is mind-blowing. Lastly, chill it with the mechanics. I think a grand total of 0 players, were excited to hear about the casting changes for mobs in dungeons. Knowing my stun does fuck all and we just overall need way more interrupts makes me never want to invite a priest or a warlock to a dungeon ever. Why would I, Blizzard? When warlocks have a shit kick, priests have none, silence doesn't count, and chickens get a 1-minute silence that can miss the target. In a world where a missed kick can be a wipe, on top of everything else of course, why is everything so punishing? Who is this game made for? And just to clarify, I'm doing plus 11s and 12s at the moment. I enjoy the challenge, but gets exhausting super fast. And the amount of people I heard gave up on dungeons this season should be a fucking clear indication that these changes failed. It's fine, they tried a new thing, it didn't work, let's move on. Let us pull more mobs please. It doesn't have to be in every dungeon or every pack, but I as a tank am so bored of pulling 2 packs because the third just adds that critical amount of casters that will wipe us, on top of half the mobs being immune to crowd control. I thought that was just a boss thing, but I guess let's make more of our kit useless so that people can spend even more time not playing their class or dead. This might be in the pipeline already, but important to point out, a few classes are still playing an older version of WoW. 2 of the most egregious in my eyes, more so than any other. First, we have Druids. They have the worst class talent tree out of all of the classes in the game. Yes, there are 4 specs here that need to be balanced. And? Are druids just supposed to suck it up because they happen to like the class? I'm not going into the details of the issues since so many people already have, we included, people like Tettles come to mind, people in the Dreamgrove Discord community, and so on. The problems have been pointed out. The solutions can be something simple like putting back affinities as starting nodes for each spec, and they unlock the baseline spells needed and leave the rest of the talent tree to actually augment the class. Maybe ferals can have access to innervate now without losing an arm and a leg. Next should be warriors. Warriors have more to do with the overall class design rather than just talents, although talents could fix that as well. Not sure what the best solution for warrior is, but the problem is simple. They are useless. Battle Shout has to be the least impactful buff you can bring to a group, since even 2 warrior specs now deal a bunch of magical damage through Mountain, while there are a gazillion specs that never do physical damage, benefiting from all other buffs way more. I'm not saying Battle Shout is useless, but if your spots are limited and you have to choose a warrior and another buff you don't have, you're probably not choosing the warrior. Rallying Cry is a joke. Intervene does fuck all if you can even spare the talent point. Warrior just needs a few simple things. Bloodlust, which I cannot believe they don't already have it. A good Intervene that provides actual value, I don't know, something like Safeguard, that's a PvP talent I think, and was a conduit back in Shadowlands. Imagine being able to give allies a small damage reduction buff that can keep tanks alive, or party members not die to dots and shit. We had that in the past. We had Rallying Cry give over 30% HP, up from the current 15%, and still warriors were not considered to bring a lot of value to the group. Now those buffs are gone, and guess what? I'm just getting every other melee over warrior, since anything warriors bring, there's a spec that already brings that plus more. If not, then warriors should 100% be the tankiest and have the most damage out of all of the classes, tanks as well. If you won't give warriors unique utility, at least make them uniquely strong. There are other examples that suffer as well, of course. Marksmanship is basically the same spec that hasn't done anything cool since Shadowlands. Warlocks are close to warriors in terms of stuff they bring, particularly to a dungeon, since Gate is pretty pog in raids. And speaking of, the 20th anniversary Blackrock Deaths has clearly shown us that Blizz can pretty much solve all raid complaints people, particularly we, have had for the last couple of years. The raid is hard but fair, has few mechanics you don't need weak Rs for, but they can 100% wipe you, and have wiped us nearly every run we did. It has graveyards outside the boss room and not in fucking Desolace. Hey, don't pull yet, wait for me to get back! Trash that is meaningful, bro. That trash gives you bronze tokens and crests. Imagine that, man. Imagine going into a raid and instead of being coincidentally AFK, you actually are looking forward to clearing the trash because you actually get something that's not fucking RNG. Imagine killing Ulgrox in Nerebar and clearing as much trash to Horror and getting some crests to make another eye level upgrade. What a weird game design that would be. 100% would destroy the Undermine raid if implemented. Nobody will play the game. And most of all, like a slap in the face, fucking gear vendors, bro. I do a full run of Blackrock Deaths, kill every mini-boss as well, and I get enough keys to buy any item from the raid loot table, which has been in almost every case the only item that I got from the entire raid experience that day. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one copy pasta from the anniversary, since it is the anniversary, it's meant to be generous, but how about if on the 8 raid bosses we get 8 coins, and with 24 coins we can buy the fucking Spy Master. That's 3 full resets of raid bosses, since of course you cannot spam difficulties for the same currency. It would be item track based. We used to do raids on Saturday, and we have a fellow monk that's been raiding since the beginning of the season and still doesn't have the contract trinket. Bro, what the fuck are we doing here? What is this? Gambling for a lottery ticket? It's a fucking video game, man. Just give me the loot. Not for free, not undeserved. I grinded weeks and months. How am I not in possession of the one item that I want? Also, Mythic bosses drop champion track warband gear? For real? What's the point in me being a Mythic raider if I cannot use the extra skill to guarantee something above what a heroic raider gets for our alts? The game is seasonal based, meaning every tier your gear becomes shit. Yesterday's Mythic raid gear becomes tomorrow's LFR gear. This feels more like Call of Duty mobile game seasons than an MMO. But if that's the case, just fucking give me the rewards I work for, man. Stop stringing me like a hamster with a carrot on a stick. I pay you for the game, the sub, I sink in the hours. What good reason could you have for giving me the same pair of bracers a 3rd time before the trinket drops? This has been way more emotional than than I hoped it would be. But that just goes to show how good the game is today and how few little things could actually improve it, and it's little things that have happened before in the actual game, and if not, they are happening today in other equivalent games on the market. Why don't we have it in the best MMO that has ever been made? World of Warcraft. But also you can check our top 3 range DPS specs to play in the game, because sometimes just being focused on the meta is boring and having some fun is just great, because in the end it's just a video game.